When I first heard that King Charles had decided to travel to Mecca, I didn't believe it. Not because he couldn't, but because I never imagined a man born into palaces, wrapped in titles, and surrounded by ceremony would willingly walk into a place where every soul stands equal before God. But that's exactly what he did. And let me tell you something, that decision alone said more about humility than any royal decree ever could. I've spent my whole career watching people, powerful people, hide behind excuses. But when I looked at Charles preparing for this journey, I saw something I rarely see in men of his stature: sincerity. There were no cameras, no PR handlers, no speeches about goodwill. It was quiet, private, almost sacred. They say he'd been studying Islam privately for years, reading the Quran in silence, visiting scholars, and asking questions that shook him more than the answers did. And one night, after a long walk through his gardens in Scotland, he said something to his aide that changed everything. "If truth is one, then I need to see where 1 billion people bow to it." That's how it began, not as a political gesture, but as a personal search. I imagine him standing by his window that night, looking at the stars, realizing that titles, crowns, and histories mean nothing when your soul is restless. You can rule nations and still lose yourself if you don't rule your heart. So, he made arrangements quietly, respectfully, through the right channels. It wasn't simple. Mecca is sacred ground, not a tourist destination. And for someone like King Charles to step there meant crossing the boundaries of privilege and entering a world where his name carried no weight. I heard he was nervous, and I believe that. You don't approach holiness without trembling a little. The day he left, London was grey, the kind of sky that reminds you how small you are under heaven. His entourage was stripped down to the essentials. No velvet, no medals, just simple clothing and a face that carried more questions than answers. And when that plane landed in Saudi Arabia, something in him changed. Witnesses said he didn't speak for hours, just stared out the window as the desert stretched endless and golden, a horizon so ancient it made Buckingham Palace feel like a recent rumor. I can almost hear his thoughts. "All my life, I've been bowed to. Now it's my turn to bow." The first steps in Mecca are not just footsteps, they're confessions. Every pilgrim who walks that path carries a weight. And Charles carried centuries of kingship, empire, and ego. But Mecca doesn't care about your lineage. It only asks what's in your heart. When he entered the holy city, dressed in the simple white cloth of Ihram, the uniform of equality, there were no guards, no trumpets, no signs of royalty. Only the hum of prayers rising from every direction. They said he looked around like a man seeing the world for the first time, his eyes wet, his lips trembling, his posture unsure, as if the crown had suddenly grown heavy with a meaning he never understood before. Judge all you want, but in that moment, Charles wasn't a monarch. He was a man stripped down to his essence. He watched the pilgrims move around the Kaaba, thousands circling in unison, chanting words older than any kingdom. And I think he realized that true power doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. I've seen people fake humility, but this was different. His aide said he kept whispering, "It's alive! This place is alive!" Maybe for the first time, he felt what it means to belong to something eternal. I can imagine his hands trembling as he lifted them in prayer, not knowing the exact words, but feeling them all the same, the gratitude, the guilt, the awe. And I'll tell you this, when you watch a man who's lived his life above others finally look up to something higher, you're witnessing justice in its purest form. That's why I say this journey wasn't about religion. It was about revelation. Every monarch is taught to hold the world. Mecca teaches you to let go of it. As he walked the marble floors under the blazing sun, surrounded by millions dressed just like him, his titles melted away. There was no, "Your Majesty," only, "Brother." And you could see it in his face, that strange mix of confusion and peace, like a man finally meeting his own soul after decades of separation. He stopped before the Kaaba, that black cube that hums with centuries of devotion. And for a long time, he didn't move. He just stood there, breathing, absorbing, remembering. Some say he wept. I believe it, because when truth hits you, it doesn't ask permission. It just breaks you open. And somewhere between those tears and those prayers, King Charles began to understand something no crown ever taught him.